Okay, there we are, guys. Back in action after a long week on the road. Anthony and I were down in Texas. We were obviously touring two of the biggest facilities in the world, Denton with Core Scientific, and then Corsicana, which is actually the biggest facility in the world for Bitcoin mining with Riot Platforms. So, Anthony, we're back in action. Feels good to be on the podcast again, eh?
I'm nervous again. It's been a long time.
Well, you don't need to be nervous. We've got a special guest here to help ease the tension, you guys. We understand the market's closed today for Juneteenth in the United States. So we thought it was a great day to get back on the podcast, provide an update on really what we've seen over the last week or so in the Bitcoin mining sector. As normal, you guys, no shortage of news going on with a ton of high-profile announcements, HPC activity, and a whole renewed investor attention on this segment. So with that being said, you guys, we're going to jump into the presentation. We'll introduce our special guest. We've got a few slides to go through, and then we can get into the company-specific questions, Q&A, as we normally do. So feel free to leave those comments, questions in the section below. We'll jump into the presentation here now, Anthony. We're going to be kicking it off, obviously, with the price of Bitcoin. And we'll bring in our special guest here as well, Dr.Lewis. So for those of you who are familiar with the Bitcoin mining community on Twitter or X, you're probably have seen DR's work on there, really become one of the main influencers in this space, or someone that I go to for a lot of our information. So we wanted to invite him on the program today, get his 2 cents on some of these companies. I know he works closely with Cypher and a few of the companies that we don't. So great opportunity to ask questions there. DR, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Bryce. It's an absolute honor. I've been a huge fan of the platform.
Great. Well, we'll get into a little bit of your background here on the next slide. But before we do, markets are closed today. So this is a snapshot from yesterday. How are you feeling about the price of Bitcoin this week, DR?
It's consolidating at a healthy level for me. You know, I'm really pragmatic about these kind of prices. I've been a dollar cost average guy for several years. When it's 30, I buy it. When it's 70, I buy it. So for me, I think, you know, this year we've seen a lot of strength, and second half should be full of fireworks.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. Anthony, how are you feeling? We're back under 65. You and I were watching the Bitcoin price closely down in the States there. Are you worried about this? I've been reading headlines saying the end is near. Bitcoin may be falling out. The bottom's falling out and cracks are showing. Do you think it's the end?
No, we've heard them stories for a few years now, and having gone through a couple of halvings now, you know, the first time going through, you see the volatility for the first time, you sort of like, you know, hey, it's a bit bumpy, but I don't think it's too bad at all at the moment. I mean, the thing is, it can change so rapidly. Just when you think it's, you know, it's going to drop to another level, you know, we'll have an update from maybe the ETFs buying more Bitcoin, and that's unprecedented. What they've done in the first sort of 5 months of this year is really, you know, far more than anyone anticipated in terms of, you know, the physical purchase of Bitcoin by these funds. I mean, one of them's already acquired more now than I think MicroStrategy. So, and there's another one that's, you know, well on the way to getting to that total as well. So, as long as there's plenty of you know, buying of Bitcoin, and they're buying Bitcoin quicker than it can be actually produced, which is another good reason, you know, why. The thing I don't like about Bitcoin is I don't like the gambling elements of it. People are gambling on the price action going up or down, and so every week we see the longs versus the shorts, and you know, if you took that out of the equation, I think you'd have you know, probably a less volatility, because it really just changed things. But I'm comfortable at this level. What we've noticed as well with the mining stocks is that that they seem to have picked up even as the Bitcoin price has dropped from that all-time high of 74. So we didn't see as much action when it reached its all-time high. Only maybe one or two miners were in the green at that point. But as we'll discuss later, this last few weeks we've seen a lot more miners go green for 2024 now. So there's an uptick in mining companies. There's a lot more news coming out lately, all positive news stories, and yeah, we'll touch on some of those today with DR.
Yeah, we most certainly will. I want to talk about the weekly top performers and year to date. I know you brought a nice little graphic for us, Anthony. What's interesting to me, obviously down 5,007.5% in the week. there's obviously a lot of selling pressure coming from somewhere. We were talking before we started filming here. There's some rumors in the industry about companies starting to dip into their HODL. So we'll get into that as well. But before we do here, we wanted to formally introduce Dr.Lewis again to the channel here. So Dr., I'll give you the mic. We've brought up basically your X or Twitter account here and a few of your most recent spaces activities. So we wanted to get a little bit of background on you, how you got into the Bitcoin space, what you do in your day job, and what you're kind of starting to do in the community here.
Thank you so much. Again, pleasure to be here. You know, my background, grew up in upstate New York. I wanted to get out of upstate New York and join the military. I did 8 years in the United States Air Force as an airplane mechanic, special forces. I was thankful enough to move back to Florida, had an opportunity to go to UCF, go Knights, and was an educator, actually. I was a teacher at high school, economics and AP macroeconomics, which has really got my passion into investing into Bitcoin. I didn't know Bitcoin back then. I was teaching back in 06 and 07 when I got out of the military. Ended up becoming a professor at UCF for a period of 8 years at history department. And when I decided rather than not to go for my PhD in history, I instead went for the Juris Doctorate in law, thankful to have the GI Bill, and became a practicing bar attorney here in Florida. And I'm in my conference room right now. It's a work day for me. I'm actually in between some clients. So I got involved in this space. You know, I really orange pilled myself. I kind of recall it was Super Bowl Sunday of 2020, and I was on my patio smoking some ribs, and I was reading some actual article about economics. And I had heard some people mention things about fiat economy and Bitcoin. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole as you have 7 or 8 hours there in front of a smoker. And by the time Super Bowl started, I'd opened up a Coinbase account, bought my first Bitcoin. And since then, I've been dollar cost averaging. As far as miners, again, I brought myself to that place where I always looked at things as a long-time trader and investor. I was big in a tech investing. I was in the Meta, or at that time, Facebook IPO. I'm a long-time investor in Tesla. My portfolio has always been tech. And Bitcoin just appealed to me. And I started thinking about these companies that produce the commodity that I was investing in. And if they can produce the Bitcoin for a fraction of what the spot price is worth, there's a margin there. So I started looking for content and actually came across Anthony Power. And he educated me a lot 2-3 years ago, and learned a ton, to be very fair, and started investing originally back in Hive and Bitfarms, some of the earlier companies. And as the evolution has gone on, I've learned a lot. My portfolio has adjusted, and now I like to think I know what I'm doing. And I'm absolutely fascinated. I've gone down the rabbit hole with this. When I decided to start putting my own content out, was January. I'd been on X for a while, but as of January of this year, I had about 200 followers, was really just a lurker. No one paid attention to me. I like to read a lot, but I decided I like where the platform was going. I like where X was headed. I like the community. And I'd done the work. I kind of knew what I was getting into, so I try sharing, and the reception's been phenomenal, which has led me to my latest endeavor. I've been hosting a series of lunchtime spaces with a great partner to work with, Mr. Adrian Morris, and we've been able to kind of do what we want to do, which is noon to 1 weekday lunchtime. I love a lot of the spaces I hear on the weekends. I love a lot of the evenings, but I dip in for 5 or 10 minutes. That time to me is tough. I like doing these in the middle of the day, a noon to 1, this type of slot where I'm able just to have a structured platform to provide great content for retail. And again, working with Adrian has been phenomenal. We've had some of the slides up there you see. Thank you so much. Sue Ennis and Sam Tabar and Tyler Page. We have one on Friday with Kent Draper from IREN. We have a lot of big guests lined up for July. We're still firming down too. We're hitting some really the big names in the sector, and I'm grateful for that. It's been a really fun experience sharing, and the feedback in the community and how generous everyone's been and helpful has been really wonderful, actually. Been able to, much like you guys, do my first Bitcoin mine tour a couple weeks ago, going to Cleanspark, and be able to meet some of these people and get to know them. It's really just deepened my passion to want to be in this sector and invest and share my knowledge.
Hey, awesome background. I didn't know you had military experience, so I'm sure Anthony will have a couple comments on that. It explains the night in the background there. your affinity to that team. But as you mentioned, DR, the space itself, I found it's so there's so much camaraderie. Everyone's so willing to help each other out. And there really is a genuine lack of information out there that all these retail investors are kind of pooling together. Anthony was really one of the first in the space. And since then, everyone's kind of joined in with their own take on it. So exactly like you say, you do the lunch hour things. We do some of the CEO interviews. Sebastian's got his deal, Talking Investing, and Tom. So it's great to see more members coming into this community. Anthony, what are your thoughts on the 8 years of service there? That was a surprise to me.
Short service. So I was I don't know, like a command sergeant major in the British Army. Did 25 years. Also, the other connection is I went into teaching. I taught I'm a CPA by qualification, but I taught accountancy for a couple of years, and actually that period of my life was actually very fulfilling. It's really to take my students were adults. They were military students, so they were like sergeants, and so not like dealing with school, children in college or children at school, but still have to deal with the effort that is required to pass some of these examinations. And some students feel they don't need to put as much effort in. Believe you me, they all need to put the effort in. And the Army's, as you'll be well aware from your military background, has got the carrot, but it's also got a stick. And you don't want to go and see the command sergeant major for a little chat at your break time. That's not going to end in the right way. So, but it was fulfilling to see these students go through, pass their examinations, move on to better things. And I loved it. I loved my service in the military. I did 25 years in total, but it was good.
Well, there you go. Thank you both. Canada's a little light on military, so we lean on the big guys down south and overseas. Anthony, you also taught tennis, so don't short sell yourself there. Anthony was a pro tennis coach as well. Now, moving along, guys, now that you know DR, his background, what brought him to the Bitcoin space, we want to get his opinion on a bunch of these companies. First things first here, I saw Sebastian's in the stream, so thanks for stopping in on your lunch, buddy. We'll be sure to address Cleanspark right away. We've actually got a slide for them coming up. But before we do, hash price. So, Anthony, we're hovering right around that low 50s again. Obviously, very related to the price of Bitcoin here. You mentioned in a prior video that $29 was kind of the price you had heard through the grapevine in terms of the absolute bare bottom hash price these companies would continue to mine at. Do you think we're at any risk of getting close to that level, or how are you feeling in these low 50s?
No, I think we'll see this sort of like this was the when post the halving, we had those few days of the really high transaction fees, and then it sort of like settled back down towards 50, got down to about 44, and then we're having these bursts of transaction fees every so often. I think this sort of like around 50 as an average will be the place to be. What we are hearing is we're hearing not necessarily the North American miners, but we're hearing miners coming off the network now, because for some miners it will be unprofitable. Bear in mind, these North American miners are tapped into some of the cheapest energy worldwide. You can't mine in the UK, you can't mine in Europe, apart from maybe some of the Scandinavian countries. So when I see these maps of the hash rate in Germany or anything like that, I do ponder as to how accurate it is, because the energy costs across Europe is phenomenally. You have a different, even the domestic costs in the US are probably about a third of the price of the UK at the moment. So, but I think in the 50 range, without any transaction fees impacting, I think it'll probably stay around there. And then as miners come off because it stops being impossible, you'll see the difficulty drop, and then you'll see the production numbers go up. So, there's a number of variables that affect this. Obviously, you've got the Bitcoin price as well. You've got the energy that these miners are paying. You've got the difficulty, which will impact on production. So, in an ideal world, I think a lot of the miners were hoping sort of like a big pull off after the halving. 20-25% JP Morgan were quoting in January. It was nowhere near that. In fact, the actual difficulty went up post the halving the first time, and then it dropped back down by about 6%. But we've not seen the likes of any big pullback on difficulty. And maybe the hash price, or maybe the Bitcoin price has been giving sort of like a reasonable margin for some of the less efficient miners out there. But we are starting to see maybe a change now, and as we move forward, it will, difficulty will be reduced, and the miners will start producing that little bit more Bitcoin, which will help them. We're coming up to the end of Q2 in a like less than 2 weeks time. And if the Bitcoin price is at this level at the moment, it's going to be troubling for some of those with the HODL, because they'll be reporting against a 71,000 price Bitcoin at end of Q1. So you'll see some unrecognized losses in the second quarter, and that will start impacting. It won't impact all the miners because some of them sell every day. So but those with the big HODLs will have they made some sizable unrecognized gains in Q1. We'll see the opposite in Q2 unless the Bitcoin price in the next 11 days starts rallying above 71,000.
Yeah, really interesting about those FASB rules. They're great on the way up, not so great on the way down. And we talked to a few of the operations guys on our tour, and they said, yeah, it is literally a single snapshot at the end of the trading day on the last day of the month. So it'll be interesting to see how much value is really dependent on that closing price. Now, next up, we've got basically the top 5 movers. So a number of people here have asked for our top 3 picks. So DR, hopefully you've brought along your top 3. Anthony and I don't do picks, but I'm feeling nice today, so maybe I'll share my top 3 positions if you guys are lucky. But in terms of top 5 movers this week, so this is sorted by 1 week change. Soluna, Anthony, which is one you've been talking about for quite some time here, up 53%. Bitfarms up 39%. So we obviously want to talk a lot about that situation with Riot. We got some good insight from the team at Corsicana. Mawson, not one that we cover, up 34%. So great for anyone in that name. TeraWulf and Cleanspark really putting it in high gear here. So DR, what do you think about this? Any surprises on this list? I know you're a big fan of Cleanspark and TeraWulf. I see you post a lot of content there. So obviously shouldn't be a surprise. Those are in the top 5. What about Soluna and Bitfarms?
I think Bitfarms really is in a great position. I'm not very big into Bitfarms as far as my position. I do have a lot of option plays August through January of next year. But if you really think about what Riot did by setting the floor at $3.30, I figured this is a really good spot. It, for better or for worse, and I think for better, put a lot of focus on what the real value of Bitfarms is. You have more people starting to talk about, well, what's Bitfarms really worth? Could it really go for $3.30 a share? Is $3, $4, $5 fair? With the amount of concentrated share that Riot has bought up, I think they're sitting at the catbird seat. They could sell that at a very hefty profit, or maybe they are successful with a leverage play. I got some mixed thoughts on that. But what it has done is really set a floor for Bitfarms, and I think that it continues to press up as we go through this potential takeover. I also think that TeraWulf has really started to build a strong base, breaking above 2, and is still in price discovery mode. Each of the last few sessions, I think 3 of the last 4, it's set 52-week highs. I don't think it's done with its runway yet. Cleanspark as well. I feel there's a lot of catalysts. Now, we just saw them acquire their new facilities in Georgia, of course, but there's also new facilities, and we'll talk more about Cleanspark on their slide, in Wyoming that the other shoe will be dropping on sooner than later, and there's some rumors possibly about further acquisitions. So I think that I'm lucky enough to be exposed to 3 of the names on that list. I'm not deep into Soluna, but clearly we're seeing a good amount of sector rotation. We saw a lot of good names starting to creep back in. And I think overall the sector is looking very healthy the last 2 weeks. I could show you stocks that didn't make that list that still had really good gains. And since June especially, several of these stocks up 30, 40, 50% or more.
Most definitely. And just a correction there, Seb, thanks for the call out. 230 was the buyout price for Bitfarms. I think you maybe stated 330. Now, Anthony, you've been beating the Soluna drum for quite some time. I know you were talking to a lot of the investors about this company, many of which hadn't heard of it. Soluna really playing into your bullish thesis here. Any surprises there?
I think it's just a matter of time before people started to recognize it. They don't get very much coverage by any of the analysts. I know Sebastian, I don't think, covers them. We've been covering for quite a while now, and you've got to remember, go back 2 or 3 years ago, and we were covering the miners that are in the top tier. They were in this sort of position then. So if you look at Soluna Holdings, they've got a self-mining hash rate of just under 1 exahash, so it's 0.8 exahash. They've got a hosting business of about 1.7 exahash. So add those together, that's 2.5 exahash of actual mining. They've got a HPC business that they're starting now, and they're allocating megawatts to that there. The great thing I like about Soluna is, of those sort of smaller miners, they're going out there and they're putting together projects together. Now, they haven't got the capital to invest in these projects because they're a small company. I'll tell you what the market capitalization in a minute, you'll probably be surprised. So they go out and put these packages together. They find cheap energy. We hear all the time about Cypher being one of the cheapest in terms of energy, under 3 cents a kilowatt hour. Soluna also under 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So, you know, people need to sort of like have a look and do a bit more due diligence in the sector there. So they've got cheap power. That's great for themselves. That's great for the host companies because, you know, they can negotiate a really good price for the host companies to benefit from that cheap power as well. And then you look at the fact that by having access to this, and it's stranded energy they're going after. They're going after energy that the utility companies can't really pass on to anybody else. So they'll take it. And they're finding these pockets of energy. They've just found, I think it's 166 megawatts for Project Catty, which is one of their projects. So they've got the energy there. They'll put together a plan, and then they'll source a partner to come in. And in the same way that CoreWeave are buying or paying up front $300 million to Core Scientific to build the facilities for that 200 megawatt contract, Soluna will also source partners who have got the capital up front to buy into the project. And then the project will be, you know, once the funding's available, the project will then be worked through, and there'll be a sort of like an agreed profit share on the output that comes out. And they've got sort of like 5-6 of these, you know, I'm saying small projects, but they're getting bigger and bigger. I mean, their revenues this year are going to be heading towards $100 million in revenue. And here's the fun part: market capitalization is about 15 million at the moment. So, you know, when you look at, you know, peer miners and what they're delivering and what Soluna are doing, I think people, you know, I'm not advocating go out there and buy Soluna. Do your due diligence, go out there and learn about them a bit more. We include them in our analysis there, and people criticize us for doing it. And hey, I was putting, you know, all these Johnny-come-latelys who were on the IREN bandwagon now. I was with IREN, you know, 2.5 years ago. I didn't hear any of these people spouting about IREN then, but I was spouting about IREN then. And so there you have to look and look at what the company is, look at the management team. We've had John Belzer on the podcast 2 or 3 times this year. He's one of the most, you know, articulate CEOs who's really passionate about what he's doing. He's gone into that company. He's doing a job. He's been there 12 months. The numbers that are coming out now since he's been there far exceed what they were doing before him. So, you know, he's already ticking some boxes there. And in the same way we like Adam Sullivan at Core Scientific, you know, I've got a lot of time for John as well. You know, he's a straight shooter. You know, he's got the background. He's been in the tech industry a long time. He's not, you know, he's not just, you know, turned up and thinks he's going to make a quick profit. He's took a company that's, you know, to a certain extent, it's the smallest company by a long shot. You know, even the likes of DMG are probably 4 or 5 times in market capitalization bigger. DMG's got an operating self-mining hash rate of 0.9. Soluna's self-mining hash rate is 0.8, and they've got a hosting business, and they've got a HPC business coming online as well. So, you know, and their market cap's at, you know, probably a 25% of DMG. And when you start looking at, you know, the bigger numbers, we've articulated that, you know, these small companies are going to have difficulty growing. I think Soluna could slightly buck the trend here. They might have to go into M&A activity to grow. These projects might just give them that upside they need to go further. And the profits they make out of these projects can then be fed back into their self-mining business or into their HPC business. And we'll talk a little bit more about HPC shortly, because from our visit to Dallas last week, you know, in terms of institutional and what they're looking at, you know, HPC was really the emphasis.
Yeah, it certainly was. And what I really like about the Soluna business model is it de-risked so much because of the way they structure these projects. Very interesting angle here, and definitely one, again, that if you're not aware of how they operate, what they do, and how they kind of have differentiated themselves with behind the grid, renewable access to energy, I think that's probably one worth taking a look at. Now, we want to talk about a number of the miners. Obviously, last week we were on the road, you guys, touring the facilities in Texas. So we're going to get into that in 1 second here. But before we do, we have a number of questions about kind of our top 3 picks here. So maybe we'll let you rattle those off, DR, in terms of your personal opinion, not financial advice, guys. But who are the 3 that you're holding the largest position in right now? Then we can jump into Cleanspark, our tours, and we'll get into the company specific slides. So DR, what we have here, this is from Anthony, year-to-date share price performance. We have Core Scientific on top, followed closely by IREN and Wolf. And then Bit Digital, actually, surprisingly, at the bottom of the list, despite a lot of the progress they've really made this year. I was surprised to see that one, Anthony. And our good friends at Riot, second from the bottom. And I know you and I were both buying Riot last week as well. So, DR, what do you think about the list? Any surprises here? And who are your top 3 right now?
Yeah, absolutely, Bryce. I'm going to echo your thoughts on Bit Digital. I really have been impressed. Had the opportunity to talk to Sam Tabar on multiple occasions. I do absolutely love their 3 verticals. They're all profitable, free cash flow. They're really looking for a big expansion as well with the HPC, and the market just hasn't woken up with that yet. As a little bit of a side play, I know we're Bitcoin focused, but they have over 20,000 Ethereum. And with the ETF launching in that opens up a lot of potential as well. To see them down the bottom just means the market has not been paying attention. The fact this is a $340 million market cap, give or take off the top of my head, and they have free cash flow and revenue of heading to $100 million in the HPC line alone. I own Bit Digital. I think there's a lot of room to go up from there. But my top 3, it's great. You're looking at my portfolio. I've been in Cleanspark and IREN are by far my 2 biggest positions, and they have been for some time. I've been in Cleanspark the longest, over about a year and a half now. I got an average somewhere down around $3 to $4. And at the same average in IREN, even though I've only been in them since roughly January, a lot of room has run in the last 6 months, 5.5 months. So those 2 at this point are about 2/3 of my Bitcoin holdings. Not merely because it's what I bought, but the price appreciation, especially on IREN, has taken it now where it's a healthy sector of my Bitcoin mining DIY WAGMI, if you will. It's those 2 by far for me. At a low cost average that at some point I'll start to think about rebalancing, but for now, I've been happy to let my winners run. My 3rd place position, really there's 3 positions that I'm kind of equal sized in. I'll go with Cypher. I do really like what they're building. I love the progress we heard early June on a couple fronts from Cypher about the new facility they're buying in Cotulla, Texas, with potential to up to 200 megawatts. I like their acceleration and upgrade on the miners, getting into Q4 to swap out miners at Odessa. I really like right now where it's at as far as value. Although, and I got in just before the Core and CoreWeave deal. Core is about equal size for me. And I came in late to them, but about 4 trading sessions before the big deal dropped $3.5 billion with CoreWeave. So I timed it just perfectly, somewhere around $4.50 to $5. So those are really the 4 biggest positions, followed by TeraWulf. And I know that's not 3, but those 5 are mine. Really, Cleanspark and IREN are clearly the top 2 for me.
Sure. And Anthony and I, funny you bring up rebalancing. We were talking about that in the hotel, actually, because similar position, Anthony's had a number of these big names run extremely fast in the portfolio. So we can get into some of the rebalancing in a second here. In terms of myself, you guys, top 3 positions by value in my account currently. First is Cleanspark. IREN is just about tied. And then 3rd would be Wolf for me. Similar to you, though, DR, I have a lot of long-dated call options for Bitfarms, actually. Some as low as like $1, $1.50 strike. So that one, based on the movements we've seen over the last couple of weeks here and the leverage nature of options, is definitely starting to take note of my account as well. Anthony, I work closely with you. We talk a lot about these stocks. you pretty much nailed the top 2 for sure. What are you feeling in terms of your top 3 now by position size?
So Bryce knows. I mean, IREN was my biggest position when it was $4 a share. So that really became significantly big in my portfolio. I sold a significant amount in the last week. So I've said to people, it doesn't hurt to take a profit, and it's still my biggest position. So even though I've sold quite a number of shares in IREN, it's still my biggest position. Cause has had a great run this last 3 or 4 weeks, and that's my second biggest stock now, followed by Bitfarms and then Riot. To be honest, I do have quite a number of shares of equal positions, after the top 2. So I could name 5 or 6 of those stocks there in that top segment there, and I do have Bit Digital as well. I mean, if we look at the Q1 results, and they had free cash flow in Q1. I like the asset light model that they use. It works for them. Didn't really work for the likes of Marathon Digital, but it's worked for Bit Digital. I mean, they're a smaller miner. They've gone out there and leased facilities, leased GPUs. Got a great energy agreement in Iceland, and are getting great margins. And even after they handed back 1.3 million back to the client for not achieving a certain condition of the contract, they still made 61% margins. So for me, that's positive. I expect that share price will probably recover. And I'm seeing in the comments now that there's quite a few Bit Digital fans out there. I'm not selling Bit Digital at the moment. I won't be selling more shares at the moment. I don't know if I'll buy anymore. We did it, like you say, last week. We having gone to those 2 sites and saw what we saw. I mean, it just reassured my position in both Core Scientific and Riot. I think 2024 could be the year of Riot. If we look at where the share prices are today and say, take these share prices and who's going to be top performer from today for the rest of the year, I think Riot will be in that top 3 because of what they'll do, and the people don't realize it. They've been in second gear for 18 months. So for 18 months, I was disappointed every time I got the monthly update. The Bitcoin production was down. We couldn't work it out. There was the energy strategy that was clouding everything. I mean, it was great getting $71 million of energy credits last year, but the production was still down significantly. They're a big miner. They should have produced more than 71 million in Bitcoin. But when we got Jason on the podcast and we kept going after the same point, come on, Jay, you've got to be clean about the production. He articulated there was a whole section of miners that just aren't able to perform at optimum levels in that heat in Texas. So in other states, they'll be fine. It's just Texas is that, we turned up, it was 33 degrees and that was a mild day. That was okay. I mean, we were sweating and we'd only come off the vehicle 2 minutes. These workers are out there all day long. And the weather conditions do impact. And bear in mind, those miners are at Rockdale, and Rockdale has the majority of miners air cooled. So in immersion, you wouldn't probably get the same level of problems that you would get, with miners operating in air cool, because no matter how much you try and cool the machines, you still got that heat. You still can have issues. And we're not talking a small amount. We're talking about the size of nearly Hive Digital that was wrong. We're talking 4 to 5 exahash. It wasn't a small amount of miners. So they went out there and they bought the whole set of miners from MicroBT. And the great thing is, they're going to replace all the miners at the Rockdale facility, get that hash rate to 15.1. That's working. So at the moment, it's probably around about the 7. So they've got another 8 exahash to go on there. At the same time, in the Corsicana facility, they're ramping up there. They're already at 3.7 last month. We know that these buildings are coming online imminently as well. So, this isn't 20 megawatts build. This is 100 megawatt buildings that are getting put up and getting online quickly. So, I've got no doubt in my mind that they will get 31 exahash by the end of the year. And so if you say, where are these companies going from now to the end of the year? I think Riot share price should do quite well. But as I say, it's not advice for anybody like that. Do your due diligence, watch the podcast, look at the presentations that they've put out there. appreciate that they've been in second gear and they've got 3 or 4 more gears to go before now and the end of the year. And we'll start seeing that. Hopefully, we'll start seeing that come out in monthly updates. You know, I'm looking forward to the August one. I mean, July one, we should see an increase. The June one, we should see an increase because this is half year, and their hash rate is supposed to be around about 20, 21 exahash by middle of the year, around about the same level Cleanspark are. Now, Cleanspark are only a couple of exahash away. So this will be interesting to see if both of these companies can get their target. Because if they don't get the target now, does that then put them back, you know, in the next 6 months where they've got significantly more hash rate, both of them, to get to where they need to be by the end of the year? And miners, you know, need to get these targets. Shareholders will be watching, you know, with bated breath as these updates come through. But I think you felt the same, Bryce. I think, you know, Corsicana was just it was just mind blowing. It was just the sheer size of it, we can see that they're even saying in 2 weeks' time, this is where we'll be up to in terms of a facility. And it was like, oh my God, you can get that much. Yeah. We, you know, it's all the prep's been done. 2 years of prep. It's now putting things into place now. So it's not like they're starting from scratch. They've been working on that site for 2 years. And people need to realize that these big sites don't happen overnight. So I know there's other sites out there, and IREN have you know, they've got a site of, I think, 1.4 gigawatts, which is, you know, bigger than the Corsicana one. But there's no ground broke yet. You know, they're looking at 2026 to start doing things there, and that's probably a reasonable time. But, you know, it'll take, if it's anything like what Corsicana is, they had to shift 75,000 trucks of wasteland to get the site ready to do what they need to do with it. And so there's a lot of work involved. I think, you know, people think they can buy a site fit for purpose and just grow a you know, facility overnight. It doesn't happen that way. I mean, even at the Childress site, we've watched the Childress site grow. All these sites that we see the pictures of, how long has a Childress site taken to get to 100 megawatts? It takes time. It takes a year for all the electricity and all their optics to get plugged in and built in, and then you can start putting the facilities up. And, you know, once you've done, you know, like say 4 or 5 at Childress, the learning curve, you can do them quicker. I expect them to get to 30 by the end of the year, by the way. But I'm just explaining to people, when you start from scratch, don't expect 3 months and you've got a working facility bringing in 10 or 12 exahash. That's not going to happen. No. And now it's Riot's turn. This year is going to be Riot's turn. It's got to be. Otherwise, you know, we'll just see them fall away from the group, I think, if they don't do it this year.
Agreed. And like you say, Anthony, it was hard to come away from that tour. And we've got a slide for Riot we can pull up. Hard to come away from that tour and not have a good exposure, a good position to that company, because seeing is believing for me. And boy, was it something to see. Now, Stefan just mentioned, thanks for getting me in Cores and IREN. You guys doubled the money, sold half on each. We wanted to mention that, you guys, we've talked about our sell strategy. It's never a bad idea to take some profit on the way up. The old saying goes, you can never go broke taking profit. Yeah, there's a little bit of FOMO if you sell at 11 and you see it go to 13. But trust me in saying I've been there when you're holding out for 12 or 13 and it goes to 1. So I just wanted to call that out. And you'll see in the community, Stefan, everybody likes to say they bought the bottom and sold the top. Very rarely does that happen. Anthony and I met a lot of people that bought Cores at 4 cents, but they weren't able to show us.
We able to
show us that trade. Hey, now I have a slide for Core and Riot. Obviously, we want to talk about those in a second. We've got some great pictures, but before we do, Cleanspark and Bitfarms. I know, Sebastian, you just brought up Cleanspark. There's some discussion right now about the potential purchase or M&A activity going on with Grid. So, Sebastian, I'm not sure if you're still here, but just maybe mention in the chat if you are. We'll address your question right now. So, where we're at here, you guys, and this was really interesting. This tweet came out June 18th, so yesterday, talking about Cleanspark picking up an additional 60 megawatts of infrastructure. However, it was comprised of 5 different sites. So to me, this really speaks to what we've all been saying here about this HPC craze right now. There just aren't a lot of big scale sites available, because I feel if Cleanspark was able to go out and purchase 100, a 200, a 250 megawatt in one location, obviously they understand the benefits of building in a single site. they would have done that. And it just appears to me like those sites, based on what I've heard, our discussions with the CEOs, behavior in the industry, they're just not available. So DR, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I know you were just at the Cleanspark Investor Day. They've got an aggressive growth target. They've got all the machines lined up, but finding infrastructure, finding locations is proving to be a little difficult, eh?
Yeah, I was at Norcross, had a great time to connect with all the senior leadership. Really came away much like you guys did on your, Investor Day experiences. Just seeing is believing. And what the Cleanspark team has laid out is a very attainable, realistic growth plan that I could really get behind. They're not going to have any trouble hitting their targets for 20 exahash by half the year or by 32 by the end of the year. The purchase yesterday, as it says in their PR, they're going to have their exahash online by the end of this month, adding another 3 exa. It's going to push them up to 21.8, almost 22. So before the first half of the year, where they had the 20 exa target, they're going to hit that, and they're going to go over it by 7 or 8%. And the general feeling I got from Investor Day was that 32 exahash target at the end of the year gave them a pretty big buffer. And that was before these 4 transactions or sites they just bought in Georgia. There's a lot still in the works. I do believe they expected by now they would have had Sandersville up. They're still waiting on 50 megawatts to energize with a transformer. That should be coming on before the end of the year and add another 3 exa. There's a Dalton expansion of 15 megawatts. That's another 0.8 exa. Wyoming and Campstool should be coming to close by the end of this month. I know the update, the May production update on June 4th, they said in the coming days. And the timeline when they first announced the deal had end of June as well. So I expect they'll have something in Wyoming launching before the end of the year. There's a lot of optionality with Miner Refresh. They have a lot of S21s on hand. And there's a lot of places they can plug those in to increase efficiency. Yeah, I'm sure they would love to have a Childress or a Rockdale or a Black Pearl. The market's not there, but they're going to get to 32. And really, my impression was they were looking towards 50. They're looking towards 100. They're looking towards possibly, and this is all speculation, accompanying with grid and pushing those megawatts up to over 1,000 under energy capacity in hand. They're going to be doing a lot more. I know that what they even said in the PR was these Georgia transactions were the leading edge of over a gigawatt that's on their desk. And Zach Bradford had talked about having dozens of offers rolling in post-halving and really being selective. 9 out of 10 of them don't even make the stage due diligence. They know what they're doing. They're going to be very aggressive in M&A. We've already seen Wyoming. We've seen Georgia. We've seen them adding. And I think that there's a lot more to come. So for me, Cleanspark's leadership has been very clear. And I believe those targets are going to be an under promise and over deliver. I don't have a doubt about that. Of the 4 companies that have forecast to be 30 exahash or over by the end of the year, I don't have any doubts about Riot. To piggyback on what Anthony was saying, I don't think IREN's going to have a problem getting to their 30, given the fact they have the land. I don't think Cleanspark's going to have a problem getting to 32. The only one I'm concerned about is Marathon 50. But Cleanspark, I think, piecemeal or not, whether they add these sites in Tennessee from grid or not, they're bringing in Georgia, Wyoming, they're going to be just fine in hitting their targets. And they have a really great approach to M&A, a very nuanced approach that through Investors Day, that was one of the most fascinating things for me, to really hear about the due diligence they do and the level of depth that they go into to make an acquisition. For them, it's about camaraderie, teamwork. They want to bring people into the fold. They don't just want to buy them out, give them a check and go away. They want to expand their portfolio by bringing in the people and the exahash together. I think it's a great approach.
It sounds like they're all also interested in Bitfarms as well.
Yeah.
Hearing stories.
Maybe they still are.
They were one of the biggest bidders for Bitfarms, so that'll play out. And I've got some. I'll talk about that in a little bit about that Bitfarms deal. There's a bit to talk about. I've done some numbers, which will sort of like be able to highlight where it stands at the moment. But we, I hope, as I say, Bitfarms, in my portfolio is the 3rd biggest and Riot's the 4th biggest. So I own both stocks. So it's a win-win both ways there.
Anthony, what do you think about the grid rumors? Have you heard anything or read anything about that?
Not really. There's nothing. I mean, there's only a speculation on on social media. There's nothing out there from any recognizable source like so. But the fact that we've seen some of these big announcements, in recent weeks, we've seen the Riot announcement there. And bear in mind that was April for them. We only found out last month, so a lot of work had been backwards and forwards before we even as investors got to hear about that.
Sure.
Then we saw the Core Scientific potential takeover. We still didn't get that question should have been asked. We should have said what was the dateline for the offer on Core Scientific and then the contract, because it looks like there was minutes between them. And so why are you signing a $3.5 billion contract over 12 years and then 6 hours later say you want to buy the company for $1 billion? That just didn't make sense. And believe you me, you think Bitfarms is cheap at that price. Core Scientific would be really cheap at that price. There's no way. And we can see the market cap today probably approaching 1.8 billion, and that's just going to increase. I mean, if they let's get into the Core slide. One sec here, Anthony.
We'll jump over because I want to add some comments on Core as well. Then we can get into Bitfarms because I know we've got some info or insight, I guess, into that transaction.
Yeah. So couple of big parts on Core Scientific. We talked with Adam on the podcast on Monday, and we asked the questions, and again, it's retail investors come through with the questions. We ask the questions that they want to know the answers to. But one of those questions, about the warrants, I mean, I don't think in January when they came out of Chapter 11, they were expecting the price to escalate this quickly, and potentially, one warrant's got 3 years to, so that the first warrant, the Core's W warrant, has 3 years before it's required to be transferred into a share. The second warrant's got 5 years. Now, actually, if the price stays above $9 for 20 days, that second warrant automatically gets put into one stock. It would be advisable, as Adam stated, that if you've got the first warrant, the Core W warrant, once it's clearly above, to convert that one there, because the longer you hold on to it, the margin will reduce. And then they've got the notes at which are a lot less. That they're already sort of well on the way now. Probably 7 or 8 days left before they actually get converted. So if those two warrants, the warrant and the convert will not get converted, that debt goes away, and they have 400 million in cash to then start utilizing. So they're debt free. There'll be zero debt on the balance sheet, and they'll have 400 million in cash. You've got a company that's sort of approaching 21 exahash in self mining, 5 or 6 in hosted, and so certainly, and performance wise, certainly on a par with Cleanspark. Yeah. And Cleanspark are valued at 4.5 billion. So what price do you put on Core Scientific once those warrants are, and bear in mind, yes, there'll be dilution. So you'll have 400 million shares. That suggests a price of, at Cleanspark's current market capitalization, that suggests a price of $11 or $12 a share to be on a par with them. And we haven't even talked about the HPC contract.
So let's talk about that, Anthony, because that's the part I wanted to bring. And I'm glad you brought up the warrant dilution. So you guys, as those warrants are converted or convertible notes, that will increase the outstanding float. So it's not like they become debt-free for nothing. They will issue shares. But Anthony, I know where you're going with this. You're going to go to the 300 additional megawatts. And that was really, you guys, the focus. So we were on a bus of 45 people. Anthony and I, plus one guy we met, were the only people interested in Bitcoin on that bus. Every single person from Wall Street, which was surreal to meet these guys, just exactly like what you would expect this group of sell side, buy side market makers to be like. Very inquisitive, very smart, and every single one of them was interested in HPC. So Anthony, you and I were sitting there, we were doing the napkin math saying, wow, if they're worth this with 200 megawatts and they're telling us they are in active open negotiations far along for the additional 300. I'll let you fill in the blanks, Anthony, but wow.
I mean, forget the 300 for a minute. They've got a 200 megawatt contract that runs for 12 years. CoreWeave give them 300 million up front to do the capital expenditure to build out these facilities to the right level that they're required to be. The energy that's required is between CoreWeave and the utility provider, nothing to do with Core Scientific. So that risk has gone. This thing about, people say the energy needs to be at, the 5 nines, 99.99% for these type of contracts. That'll be negotiated between CoreWeave and energy provider. And there'll be, you're in Texas, so there is some sort of requirement on various programs to curtail for small amounts. We're talking small amounts, might be 15, 20 minutes, a couple of times a day or once a day, something like that. When the domestic demand is required to be, to have sufficient power. And so, that was the risk that people in HPC, that's the risk for every one of these miners at the moment is can you provide a service that delivers the right level of power all the time? So that's no risk to Core Scientific. And the margins, so we're talking about all costs now, not just the energy cost is at the cost to Core Scientific. So we're talking about all the costs, the staffing costs, all the G&A costs. From year 3 onwards, the last 10 years of that contract, $233 million of free cash flow every year. Now, you try and calculate some of these miners that aren't going into the HPC space and forward plan, which is not that too difficult to do, what the free cash flow will be on Bitcoin mining if the Bitcoin mining price stays below 100,000. And believe you me, there's a gulf of difference. Sam Tabar, as DR will probably agree with, I think Sam said I think the Bitcoin price has got to be $110,000 before they start earning more from Bitcoin mining than they do from the HPC contract. Those are the types of margins. And actually, don't forget, they're leasing. So they're paying these fees for leasing everything. So, if they were owning stuff, then there might be a sort of slightly bigger margin. But they're making great margins out of this. And the Bitcoin mining, at the moment isn't getting anywhere near those margins. That's why Sam, on every monthly update, he's the only one, he's the only miner who puts in non-Bitcoin mining revenue on a monthly update. And I know why, because he wants to fly the flag and say, look, we're getting $4 million a month for this HPC contract. That's our $50 million a year. And soon that will go to just over $8 million a month. But the difference between the 2 days in terms of who was on the bus those 2 days, HPC was the obvious reason for a lot of these Wall Street analysts making the effort to get to Denton to see this facility. And out of the 50 questions that were asked, 47 or 48 were around HPC. And Bryce and myself flew the flag and asked a Bitcoin question, each of us, just to keep the interest there. But, when we got back on the bus and we were talking to the analysts and saying, what about Bitcoin mining? Not interested. Not interested one bit. Don't care about it. There's no predictability in Bitcoin mining. HPC, 100%. The revenues are there. The revenues will be there. The margins will be there. We can predict quite easily what that's going to look like for the next 12 years. And then, when Adam comes out and says, by the way, guys, we've got another 300 megawatts. And they had 50 expressions of interest for the first 200 megawatts. Yeah. 50. Of which, many of them would like with the Core Scientific, with the Cleanspark, looking for sites, many were discounted straight away. Because they turned around and said, you need to have a plan for a minimum of 100 megawatts, and you've got to give the capital up front so we can build a facility for you. If you can't meet those 2 requirements, you're getting discounted. And so, but they still left with a serious number. And so again, we tried to tease out from Adam in the podcast this week, with the 300 megawatts, are CoreWeave a potential, a company that could come in for the additional? And they said they've got an option to get the additional 300. Yeah. So just think of what the free cash flow on 500 looks like. If it's 233 for 200, it's going to be, it's just going to be a ridiculous amount. It's going to be 600 million in free cash flow. No mining company's getting that unless the Bitcoin price is probably about $300,000 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say a couple things there, Anthony. So number one, you guys, the number we keep hearing, $100,000 to $110,000 Bitcoin, is where the HPC margins and the Bitcoin margins kind of meet that crossing point, right? So up until that point, as we're seeing in the market right now, a lot of the HPC focused companies are really overperforming. If and when we do get to that 100, 110, I think that may kind of be the inflection point. The other thing I wanted to mention, Anthony, based on all this information and interest in the HPC, we've actually added another metric on the Power Mining Analysis website, you guys. So on each individual page, that little power icon at the end, you can now see how many megawatts under management each company has. And we're also adding a global map. So you'll be able to highlight over whatever company of interest, and you can see a breakdown of mining, hosting, HPC facilities, and the megawatts associated. So we definitely want to continue to tell that story as it's evolving in this space. The other number I wanted to throw in, Anthony, and correct me if I'm wrong here, they said in addition to the nameplate megawatts, so say the $200 megawatt core deal, they add about 30 to 35% for auxiliary services. So things like air conditioning, for example, that are needed for HPC, but not for Bitcoin mining. 24/7 security is also another big cost. So keep that in mind when you say, hey, 200 megawatts out of X amount of portfolio, it's probably closer to, I think, 270. Was that the number, Anthony?
Yeah, it's 420 for the 300. So yeah, it's about 30% of additional ancillary energy to cover other things.
Gotcha. Okay, now guys, we're up over 120 concurrent viewers, so let's all just take a second here, hit the like button for the special guest, Dr. Lewis. We have a veteran, an attorney, and a Bitcoin guy on the channel, and Anthony's a 25-year vet. So let's go out there, let's smash the like for them, let's get the comments going. And next slide, Anthony, really a great extension of what you just mentioned. Core Scientific, you guys, we cannot update this fast enough. So every week we basically update this slide. I took out the word quietly because I don't think Core is a secret anymore. Over $9 or very close to it, but we actually broke $10 on the 17th. So I wanted to get both of your opinions on this. Maybe start with DR. Core and the CoreWeave deal, this has really galvanized the entire industry, hey?
Absolutely. And, to piggyback, this is why you two are the GOATs. Anthony, absolutely agree with what you said about cores. And Bryce, really awesome that Power Mining Analysis is now having megawatts as a category. That is such a crucial metric to my investing right now. When you showed the top 5 this year, I'm looking at it and I'm in all those 5. In fact, I think they may be my top 5 largest positions in no particular order. But the megawatt size that Cores and Wolf and Cypher and Cleanspark and all these companies are able to bring is such a huge in-demand asset. I'm not surprised the guys on the bus were all about the HPC. It just mirrors what I'm hearing in my spaces I've been lucky enough to do with Adrian Morris. That we've had on, a lot of interaction with people in the HPC sector, Sam Tabar, and recently talking to Tyler Page. But even to back that up, on my X timeline, I had the director of communications for TeraWulf says the core deal was a game changer. That since that was announced, his phone has been ringing off the hook. He's gotten calls from a dozen high-quality funds that he would never have expected to be called in the wake of that CoreWeave deal because of the megawatts that TeraWulf is bringing, nearly 600 megawatts by the end of 2025. Tyler Page, Cypher is a pure-play Bitcoin miner, but he's echoing the same thing, that he is getting nonstop calls off the hook because of the capacity they're bringing to bear in Black Pearl, also in the high 500, almost 600 megawatt range. His concern there was the capex, the cost. The great part about the deal with Cores is that they're getting that capex cost up front from CoreWeave to build it out and giving it back in way of credits. And what Tyler was saying, really sharp CEO, that if they could get a deal like that where the capex was an obstacle, they'd listen. That the value of the megawatts is humongous. And you're looking at the value of the megawatt being the asset in demand with companies like IREN, companies like Wolf, Cypher, Cleanspark, and Cores. Sooner than later, that 300 they have left under development is going to drop, and I am expecting CoreWeave to pick up the option. I got no inside information on that. Just how aggressively they went after the purchase of Cores afterwards, wanted to buy their business. I think they're going to maximize the option and pick it up for the extra conditions. I think that 60 to 90 days, they're already getting close to 30 into it. So I think we hear something rather soon this summer about the pickup there. But even Sam, when he's talking about the asset light model with HPC, they're expanding. They're talking to their anchor client about going to 100 H100s. They're looking at fat margins. And he's also dropped the nugget of, given the predictability of the cost of HPC, how it's a stable revenue stream, there may be an opportunity for them to vertically integrate, to buy their own data center, not to be asset light forever when it comes to HPC, not with Bitcoin. The Bitcoin, he's more comfortable being asset light, but with the predictability and the fact that you can project out the HPC, Bit Digital might buy their own center. And they're actually looking at that as well as a sales team to expand their branch. But back to cores, if they did one thing, and they've done a lot, but if they did one, it's just that they set the benchmark out there for the value of the megawatts for HPC that the rest of the sector has had a rediscovery of their price and that energy behind it. It's been a real driver to price from my perspective.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And actually, Bryce told you there was like 45, 47 people on that bus going to Denton. When we went to Corsicana the next day, the bus was like half full. And it was really only the analysts who were sort of like interested in sort of like mining. 20 people were missing from that day. And so, even on the bus, they were hoping to sort of like, they were getting prepared to ask questions about HPC. But Jason sort of like in the opening remarks straight away said, just before we start this, we are a pure play Bitcoin miner. We are not moving into HPC. We have a 1 gigawatt facility here. This is going to be 10 buildings of 100 megawatts, all huge Bitcoin mining in immersion cooling technology. And so, I came away from both of those facilities extremely bullish for different reasons. Yeah. I mean, we were sat in, Bryce talks about, when these people say I bought at the 4 cents and I sold at the high and all that, shows your trades. And one chap in the room there, a retail investor, had a 9-figure account with Core Scientific.
Yeah, and showed us the account on his iPhone.
I actually said to him, I think you've got your app's got a problem. It's got 3 extra zeros. He went, all mine. It's all mine. And so he bought at the right time. He bought January, February, beginning of last year. He bought some before Christmas, and he knew what he was getting into. And I have said on so many podcasts in the last 8-9 months now that a lot of these mining CEOs or the sort of the senior teams in these companies would other mining companies were talking about Core Scientific a year ago, and saying, watch this space. Who are you bullish on? Core Scientific. And I was saying this go back and look at the podcast. I was saying this, I was buying Core Scientific at, 30 cents last year or whatever it was, when it was low there, because I was hearing positive things. And when Adam got appointed, the way to find out if you've got a great person leading the team is ask the other miners, because miners love to talk about each other. They really do. And everything was coming back. He was well known in the industry. All these miners knew Adam, from working his previous role. And so we had relationships with Riot, with Argo Blockchain, and other companies in the mining space as well. So they're all aware of Adam. And when he took over there was I was hearing so many comments from people in the space saying, that's a great appointment. That's a really, really strong appointment. In the same way, we've probably flown the flag a little bit for Ben Gagnon as a chief mining officer at Bitfarms as well. There's certain people who are in these slots that everybody recognizes. If Ben said tomorrow, you know what, I'm looking for a new challenge, he'd probably get 15 offers of employment from the other mining companies, like, come work for us, because he's well thought of. Now, one person, one person isn't a company, but you can look at certain individuals and you can think, they can galvanize, and
just like
Adam is certainly galvanizing, Core Scientific. They've got a great team there, great management team. Bryce will tell you, I was asking questions left, right, and center, on the Bitcoin mining, because the rest of the analysts there, they weren't interested in Bitcoin mining. So I'm thinking, why is nobody else answering? I'm asking all these questions. They were waiting till they get to the actual investor bit and do the HPC, and then the 50 questions came in about HPC. Now on day 2, where we went to Corsicana, Jason laid the groundwork and said, look, we're not going into HPC. And one person tried to get a question, and he said, no, I've already explained, we're pure play. And he actually said, I admire what they've done. I admire what Core Scientific have done. They have done something groundbreaking, and DR's has already said, it set the benchmark in terms of the value of your power and data centers where you can put this these HPC GPUs into. So to be honest with you, it was a great 5 days. From the minute we got off the plane in Dallas to the minute I left Dallas, everything went like absolute clockwork. Everything was perfect. We got to meet some great people. Bryce and myself, we didn't really know these analysts. We're on the bus there. I was quite surprised how many came up and said, during the 2 days, watch your podcast. I've seen your articles, and they knew who I was. But I'll be honest, I now know who some of them are, because we've swapped details and things like that. And I'm sure if we go to other investor days, we'll see these people again, because they are representing the top 11, 12 big companies on Wall Street. The Cantor Fitzgerald and the Rileys and the JP Morgans, and so all these people were there to look at it, but from different perspectives. Denton was definitely about HPC, and that's probably the strongest indication of where the market sits. And during that presentation, which lasted 2 hours, that gentleman's portfolio increased by $20 million during the presentation, because about an hour into the presentation, the share price spiked by about 10%. So as it's going out live and the market's hearing what's going on, and Adam sort of just throws in this 300 megawatts of additional capacity for HPC. Yeah. And people left that meeting, just like you're saying there, DR, imminent. It's going to be imminent. There'll be something announced imminently, not like next year. Something will be announced really soon.
And Anthony, I was going to say, the question I always like when we go to these things is, Anthony never asks who's the best miner. He always asks the CEO who's the second best miner. And Core Scientific came up in a number of those. So we want to talk about Riot now, and then followed by Bitfarms, because these two stories are closely intertwined here, you guys. So again, last week we went out to Core Scientific, to Corsicana and Core Scientific. We got some great video, some great footage, so we would encourage you to watch those on the channel. But simultaneously to that, a couple days earlier in the week, Riot CEO Jason Les actually was called out to meet the former president Donald Trump. Trump has been very active, saying that Bitcoin now needs to be made in the United States, trying to really repatriate that into North America and the United States specifically, saying it's a defense against government CBDCs. And we're now seeing some of the other presidential candidates. So Biden even now starting to accept Bitcoin to his platform. So DR, I wanted to get your take on, number one, the Carysdale hit piece. And I got to do a shout out to the Bitcoin mining guy. The content he puts out in relation to Carysdale Capital gets me every day. Absolutely hilarious. But I wanted to get your take on the timing of that hit piece. I personally would not be shorting anything to do with the Bitcoin mining or HPC sector right now, but these guys feel like there's some arbitrage or opportunity there. And then we're going to talk about this Bitfarms deal, because very contentious on both sides of the aisle here. I personally hold Riot and Bitfarms. I think it's very beneficial regardless of the outcome, but I want to get your guys' take. So first things first, DR, what's your opinion on the hit piece? The short report, I should say.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm with you. Timing is curious. This is not the time in the cycle that I feel like I want to be short Bitcoin miners or any of the leveraged proxies or Bitcoin itself for that matter. So I was a little surprised to see it. But, I've been around the block long enough, and you guys have been around longer than me, that I've seen a few of these hit pieces come out. They dropped one on Hut 8, right? They went ahead and tried to bury them in the timing. These companies are out to make money. They're out to spread FUD, to try to point out flaws, and every these companies have warts, some of them fairly, some of them not. They're here to make money. Now, the timing of this, I'm really surprised Kerrisdale wanted to enter into this war on Bitcoin miners, as they called it, at this time and place. We've seen these short reports before. We've seen them on other companies. We've seen them be successful. I don't think this one necessarily will be. In fact, I don't think it will be at all. Riot has a lot of positive momentum going, and you guys can speak more to this. I'll leave that for you, but real quick to translate into the Bitfarms thing, no matter how they play this, this is a huge win for Riot. There's no way around it. Either they're going to acquire an international branch, as Jason Les calls it, and what I consider a premium at these prices, growing to over 30x with a great efficiency in the coming years as they build out Paraguay. I think this is a phenomenal opportunity for them to diversify away from Texas and get into the international. And if Bitfarms already has miners on order, trying to get to 35 exa by 2025, what a great way to make this perhaps the biggest company in the world and to have Bitfarms be the international arm. And if it doesn't work, they're up significantly on these purchases dating back through April. They were buying these things under $3. So I think at 14% right now, I don't know the average here, but they're far ahead. And I know their initial purchases are very far ahead. They're going to more than likely, as you guys know from your tour there, hit their growth targets. They're going to have a positive outcome from Bitfarms. It's at a dangerous point in the cycle for Kerrisdale to enter it. I just don't know what they're thinking.
And DR, I also wanted to throw in there, I don't think any of the HPC hype at all is built into Riot because, as you said, Anthony, Jason just squashed that right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, DR. You've got a lot of upside catalysts, and I don't think, like you said, Anthony, they've been operating in second gear. People have been frustrated with Riot. I don't see much downside from here, and I see a lot of upside potential. Sorry to interrupt.
No, one more thing real quick, just on the pure play miners, Riot, Cleanspark, the guys who aren't doing HPC, it's actually a win for them. These other companies are putting their rack space, their megawatts into HPC. If you look at it, you know, Cleanspark was clear, we're not doing it. Our competition is the global hash rate. And the more they divert their resources, the rack space, their megawatts there, the better it is for us. So I think it's a win-win. Yeah,
no, I have to agree with that. My take on the Riot, I hold both shares already, because in fact Bitfarms slightly more than Riot. I think people just need to understand what the potential of one big company could mean. You know, being part of that big company, that will be the biggest mining company in the world. And with that comes all the benefits of being the biggest mining company in the world in terms of growth. You know, the gap forming now between those that can and those that can't is really, you know, I'm trying to think now. I think Bitdeer are probably at the, and Hut are at that bottom edge of those that can. And then there's like a gap. Then there's a gap of about $400 or $500 million to the next miner, which is then, you know, into Hive Digital and Bit Digital. And so, you know, you want to be a part of a company that can. You know, I sat next to Ben Gagnon 2 years ago in London. Their target for 2022 was 8 exahash. They only achieved 8 exahash in May when they went to 9.5. So 2 years later, they've achieved that target. They've got an ambitious growth target to 21 by the end of the year. So I always include Bitfarms with those other 4 miners that DR talked about earlier about ambitious growth targets and saying who's going to do it and who's going to not. History will say that Bitfarms will struggle to get to 21 by the end of the year. And I hope they do it. I'm a shareholder. I hope they do it. But history will say your targets for previous periods haven't been great. And bear in mind, the targets for nearly all these miners they never achieved it. Cleanspark did it 1 year. They didn't do it last year. They were miles away last year from their target. I think it was 22 at the start of the year. They managed to get to 10 by the end of the year. They changed it so many times. It went from 22 to 20 to 16, and they finished at 10. Yes, they got to 16 in February, and we gave them benefit for that 7 or 8 weeks later than that was planned. But bear in mind, it was a big target. IREN got to their target last year. But again, you're looking at previous years, look at the Marathon targets, how many they've missed. Marathon had, 80,000 miners in a garage for about 12 months, waiting for sites to become available. How are their shareholders feel? How is the Mara pigs feeling with a garage full of miners not even plugged in? I'd love to get some feedback on how they're feeling about that there. So again, you're right to say, on Marathon going to get to 50 exahash. If all the dots and join up, then yes. But I'm looking at the two miners that have got everything on one site, IREN, Riot, because no matter what, we saw 500 employees working at Corsicana on facilities, and also the Riot team managing the process as well. And Jason, I said to Jason, if you ever get behind, I'm sure you just bring in more staff. He went, absolutely. They're working 24/7. They're not working. It's not 12-hour days. They've got shifts. They can go around the clock, and the sheer pace. They're not building. These are 100 megawatt buildings that are going up, and they'll have those 400 megawatts in there. He's already articulated the miners go into the Rockdale facility to replace the ones that aren't working optimally, and they'll get to 31.5 by the end of the year. Bitfarms on top of that takes them over 50 exahash, takes them above Marathon Digital, and the market would see that probably in a real positive stance. Now, here's the issue now. So when they made that offer for Bitfarms at $2.30, it was low. We already think now that there's a floor now for these miners of about 100 million per exahash. So you're looking at what Bitfarms are already at 9.5, and they'll be at 12 by the end of June. Having had Ben on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. So I did some calculations this morning. If Bitfarms gets to their 12 by the end of June, that gives them about just over $100 million per exahash, which is about right. If I look at Riot at the moment, Riot's value per exahash is about 126 million. At the moment, Bitfarms is 98. So there's probably a little bit of wiggle room there. But if I look at Cleanspark, $207 million per exahash, Cypher, 168 million, Marathon, 150 million. So of all those miners, and bear in mind that run on IREN over the last month or so, which has seen their share price go from $4 to $14. Their value per hash rate now is $172 per exahash. That puts them into that sort of So if we're saying what are we talking about for these companies now? Is it over 150? So Riot can articulate and say, well, the deal wasn't that far away, and both of those, in terms of the big miners, look like they've got the best value in terms of value per exahash. One at 126, Riot, and Bitfarms at 96 at the moment. And if you look at what they're going to be, at the end of the year, so all things being equal, I do an end of the year calculation as well, and end of the year, Riot 57 million per exahash, Bitfarms, if they get to their 21, 44 million, Cleanspark still 116, Cypher 100, Marathon 92. So even if they achieve their targets, Riot's valuation is pretty much half the amount of the three other big players in the business. I don't include Core Scientific in there because of the challenges with their balance sheet at the moment. I do enterprise value and things like that. So I need a few more bits and pieces of information. But I think once the debt's sorted out with Core Scientific, as we already said, they're a $4.5 million company just on the self mining. Add on what you think about for the HPC, and they could be the most valuable data set, whatever you want to call them, data center company in the world in terms of the Bitcoin mining and HPC. So I think there's probably a bit more to go, but I think that they're not far away from the ballpark now. I think 100 million was like a floor level for exahash. Now let's go back to we talked about the likes of these smaller miners. Soluna have got 0.8 and they're only 15. So that would make them sort of around about the 20 million mark. And they've got a hosting business twice as big as their self-mining business. So some of these small miners, Hive Digital under 20 million per exahash. When you look at the value of that company from an enterprise value, take away the hodl, look at the exahash. So they are something like 5 times cheaper in terms of valuation than Bitfarms and Riot are at the moment.
I've got slides for them, Anthony, we can bring up. In my opinion here, you guys, I just don't see a debt. If you're only in Bitfarms, the share price has appreciated and you've now got a lot of interest in your company. If you're only in Riot, they've got a 15, give or take, % interest in Bitfarms, and they're making a ton of money off that position. If you're in both, great. If they end up going their separate ways, obviously you get the benefits I just said. If they end up combining, you've only got one CEO right now anyways, so that's an easy transition. You get the geographic exposure, and you get one of the biggest companies still at a discount to a lot of the other major players like Anthony.
With a treasury department to back everything that Bitfarms was going to do.
Sure.
Yeah. Bitfarms has really got themselves well positioned for 2025, increasing the 100 megawatts additional they got on the dam project in Paraguay. They have the PPAs in place. It's a great get for Riot.
Yeah, they seem to be doing everything right. And in your report, Anthony, again, one of the most efficient Bitfarms top production per exahash. So we've covered some of the big stories here now, you guys. I brought along a table for each one of the miners, so we can start getting into this. We've got questions, I think, for most of the miners we cover here. So we'll get into IREN next. This is another one, you guys. 3 weeks ago, $7, $9, $14. I brought up a chart here. They peaked out at 1464. IREN is another one that we're just really excited about on the channel. We've been covering for quite some time, and they really, since they put out that announcement alongside earnings of that big $500 million ATM, things changed fundamentally for IREN at that point, and they announced that 30 exahash. They moved from our tier 2 comfortably into tier 1, Anthony. DR, what are your thoughts on IREN?
I'm incredibly bullish on IREN. As I mentioned earlier, we're going over our picks. They're my second largest position, and there's a pretty big gap between 2 and 3 for me. So this is something that I've been in for quite a while, and I'm glad to see the developments. I think that leadership here has outlined a phenomenal plan, and every time someone wants to get online and question them, it seems like Dan Roberts has got a perfect answer, very articulate in their vision. And I absolutely love the projections of what they're doing at Childress with the miners on order and a certain good number of them funded. I want to say, their targets should be very attainable. The 20 by third quarter, 30 by the end of the year, 40 in the first half of 2025. They are just cranking out building after building in Childress with nothing to do but add in the miners that they have on order with a purchase option. And I expect they're going to have most of those miners paid for sooner than later. They have an amazing land portfolio behind it. If you want to project this out to 2026, Anthony mentioned earlier, the huge 1.4 giga development site, oh my gosh, in Texas that they have coming. And of course, they have an HPC tie-in. They already have an annualized revenue run with Poolside that they're looking to expand. Very open to expanding their HPC vertical, and the value of their megawatts and what Coors has set at their floor really puts some great projections out for IREN. I think they just crossed a $2 billion threshold as far as market cap. But if we're being fair and valuing their exahash, where they're growing, their land portfolio, their obvious HPC vertical that exists and will expand, I don't think it's that much longer till we see it hit a $3 billion market cap. I'm very bullish on the company.
Yeah, as are we. And Anthony, I know this is one, as we talked about in our position sizing, that's been a great performer for you. Any other comments on IREN before we jump into some of the other players here?
No, I mean, they do everything well. They're in that sort of top 3 terms of production per month. They don't hodl. That's probably one thing that probably retail investors are looking at. They want to see some of the miners hodl. We know Core Scientific, once the debt's been repaid, they're going to strategize to hodling. They believe that's the future. Jason's talked many times about their strategy on hodling there. Cleanspark, Marathon, Hive, Hut, all big hodlers in the space. But IREN and Wolf probably led the way in terms of selling on a daily basis. And Dan and Paul can excuse me, can articulate the opposite argument. And Dan said, it's not that they'll never hodl. They just find at the moment they've got a better use for their Bitcoin. And who can argue with their performance? I think the share price has just been really catching up with where the performance has been. The performance has always been there. It's just the share price. Whether it's the fact that an Australian company, so not like some of the US companies did get benefit. If you go back 3 or 4 years ago, Riot and Marathon were the 2 US miners, not the oldest miners. I mean, Hive and Hut, and Bitfarms are the 3 oldest miners from North America. But when Marathon and Riot came in, and they got that support from the American market, big market, and they got onto the NASDAQ early, that gave those 2 companies a real head start on everybody else, and they were exponentially growing. They didn't have to go and dilute like Cleanspark and IREN have done recently. They just got so much investment because they were US miners, American market, and the interest was there, institutional and everything. We had the big 2 big investment banks in the world were buying Marathon and Riot. Now we're seeing the opportunities that Cleanspark have had in the last 18 months. We're now seeing what IREN have been able to do. And this is great. This share price now, can you imagine, IREN were probably trading shares $4 to $5 for the last 500. And now you're trading, $13, $14 using an ATM. Cleanspark were trading $20 in the first, they got rid of $500 million worth of shares in literally 2 months, in January and February, probably at an average price of about $18, $19. It makes a difference. You're not giving away the whole company.
I always bring that up, you guys. ATMs are based on dollar value. And Anthony, you're exactly right. If you're diluting at $4 versus $12, it's 3 times the number of shares going into the market, right?
Yeah.
So now moving along here, you guys, we're getting some good dialogue and questions in here. TeraWulf, where's the Wolf Pack at here? I'll throw that one up on the screen. TeraWulf's another one, you guys. Past month, I pulled a 28-day snapshot here, 131% appreciation. Now, TeraWulf was up in the $4 range, I think back in the December bull run there. This is one that I've held all the way through. I'm a big fan of Paul Prager, everything this company is doing. Maybe him and I disagree slightly on the hodl, but you know what? It's looking like maybe he was right on that stance, at least in Q2. Plus, he's got close ties with the energy production at these sites and just a significant portfolio under management, which you alluded to there, DR. I think north of 600 megawatts or so. We're starting to get pictures now of them racking and stacking, as they say. This is an air-cooled building, I know now, because we've been to one, Anthony, and you don't see the immersion tanks, but looking really good there in their new Wolf vests. They're stacking in the new mining rigs and look to be making progress towards those targets. What are your guys' thoughts on the Wolf Pack?
I'm a big fan. I have a good sized position in Wolf. They're definitely in my top 4 or 5 positions, and I love where they're headed for 2025. They've done a great job paying down debt. In the past, that was my one big overhang on the stock. They've done a wonderful job in reducing the amount of debt with a plan to likely have it paid off. I like the fact that they're also building towards 595 megawatts by 2025. And they're doing it with hydro and nuclear in a very positive geographic area in the Northeast. They have a very favorable energy rate. It's going to be down to 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour at a blended average at a very efficient rate. Looking at my notes, they're going to get down to low 20s. I'd like to see that maybe get a little bit better as we're seeing so much of the tech come out from Bitmain, especially recently. Maybe there's a chance that they can get some better machines, but even still, we're going to round that up to about 600 megawatts at a 3.5 cent renewable clean carbon energy. their all-in cost per coin are phenomenal. And having heard Patrick Fleury unpack the cost per coin and the debt being repaid, I don't see anywhere for the stock to go but up. And it clearly seems the month of June, the market has agreed with me. This thing broke out of that wedge in that $2 stable coin, and now it's pushed. It's doubled. And I still think there's a good deal of runway left. I'll be wearing a wolf hat this weekend more likely than not.
No, it reached $4 middle of last year as well. And I actually dropped Patrick a note last year and said, like, you know, I hope to God you're using the ATM as the share price is at $4, making use of it to bring some money and pay the debt. And he dropped me a note back saying how astute of me. But I would imagine they're using it now. The debt I don't see as a major problem. In fact, I think some of the actual owners have some of that debt. It's some of their debt, so it's not like it's, you know, they're going to go bankrupt by not paying it. So if the owners own some of the debt, it's not a problem. The other issue is that they own the energy company as well, so you know, they're able to get these really great prices. There's a little bit of uncertainty at Nautilus with the fact that AWS have purchased the Talon part of the deal, and does that mean that you know, they might want the whole of the site, or whether they'll allow TeraWulf to carry on there and grow to 100 megawatts as they've planned to. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there, but as you say, they've got a good growth strategy that I think we're looking for 10 exahash by the end of June, 13, just over 13 by the end of the year, and then next year, like a lot of the other miners, we're going to see some big jumps. I like the team at TeraWulf. You know, Paul's great when you get him on the podcast. You know, he's an ex-military person as well. So he says it exactly as he sees it, takes no prisoners. And so, you know, you're going to get a direct answer to a question from him. But yeah, looking at valuation now, they're over 1.5 billion now, TeraWulf. So, you know, go back 4 months ago, I think there was only 2 or 3 mining companies over $1 billion at the time like that. I think there's 3 with, you know, Cleanspark, Marathon and Riot. Now we've got 10 or 11. So, you know, there has been a real shift in this last few months, and that's when the Bitcoin price has been dropping. So, you know, we talked a couple of months ago about, was there an uncoupling of the mining stocks and the Bitcoin price, because the Bitcoin price was rallying 60, 65, 70% this year, and only one miner was in the actual green at the time, and that was Cleanspark, but they'd added 6 exahash to their hash rate. You're going to get some, you know, you're going to get a little bit of benefit from the market for growing that amount of hash rate in a short space of time. But now, as we showed with the chart earlier on, you know, literally most of the miners are up, and some of them are up significantly for a number of varied reasons. So, as I say, TeraWulf have had a great rise. I bought in TeraWulf last year when it was like 52 cents a share, and I could see the benefits there. They'll get the debt sorted out. They've got a plan, and they're showing that they're sticking to the plan. So they're literally telling you the dates that they're going to pay off the debt. Patrick is, again, he's another one of these that's really well regarded in the space, not just by TeraWulf, but by the community as well. So again, it was another great pick for him going into TeraWulf. I know some of the directors there. I've met Amanda, and I've been on a panel at a Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam with both Amanda and Nazar Khan, who's the co-founder with Paul. Great, honestly, great people, great team working there, and you know, rightly getting the credit for what they've done. You know, the markets are, you know, obviously starting to appreciate TeraWulf. We've got the Wolf Pack howling. So, you know, always a good sign when the wolf pack are howling. It just takes the emphasis off. There you go. Pigs. I'm trying to work out what we can call the core scientific band, because there's a band of them coming out now, and
the Core Club. The Core Club.
Yeah, the Core Club.
Hey, Anthony,
led by own Gary. So
you said you picked up TeraWulf at 52 cents. Let's see the trade, buddy. That's we're gonna have to see that one in the proof. No, I have seen that trade, and it was a great one. Now moving along here, you guys, we're going to run till the hour. So we've got about 25 minutes. We covered Cleanspark. We're seeing some good questions about Bitdeer and Hive, actually. So Bitdeer, I put together this slide. You guys will spend maybe 3-4 minutes on each company here. Interestingly enough, so Bitdeer put out their technology roadmap for their Seal Miner platform. So Seal Miner is their in-house rig that they built this year. Anthony and I love the name, and we've really talked about it a lot because as a first attempt, you guys, to come out at 18.1 joules, which is pretty much among the best efficiency of any producer right now, that's pretty good. I said it's like coming out with a cell phone and keeping up with the iPhone on your first stab. It's not hard or easy to do. Now, that being said, they have a 50-person strong R&D team, extremely strong connections and roots in the R&D development space. Then they come out with this slide, Anthony, 14 joules, 10 joules, 5 joules. We almost lost our hair. We were saying, no way are they going to get to 5 joules per terahash by 2025. However, and shout out to the mining pod, we got information from Bitmain now launching their S21 XP Hydro. They're already in the 12 joule range. So in my head, Anthony, I said, okay, maybe this 5 joule, 10 joule business is a little bit more attainable. Let's talk about this for a couple of minutes, you guys. This is crazy, not only from the stance of Bitdeer and what this can do in terms of their diversified revenue, but when we talk about megawatts and efficiency dense computing, we're really moving in the right direction fast here.
Yeah, I mean, Bitdeer for me is sort of like the complete miner. It's got that full integration. It's got a self-mining business, a cloud hash rate business, a hosting business. It's going into HPC. So in Singapore already, it's got the pilot HPC running already, and they're going to expand that now because they're already seeing positive feedback from that there. And then they go and announce we're going to start building our own machines. That for me was like the CoreWeave deal with Core Scientific. What could Bitdeer do to improve on what's been a sort of like a great 12 months anyway? And that announcement came out. And you've got to remember, who Bitdeer are. Bitdeer were formerly Bitmain, so it's not like a massive move away. You're not going into some space where you've got no idea. They've got a big R&D team. They've got more in the R&D team at Bitdeer than Marathon have got employees. So that just puts it into context there. Are these going to be achievable targets? I was on a call about 2 months ago, and I was hearing that Bitmain were bringing out better miners than the S21 Pro at 15, and I was hearing 10 was going to be achievable by the end of the year, which looks likely now because they can get to 12 now and see some of the miners get those orders out. It can only improve. I thought we were flattening out when the XPs came out because that was a big move up from the S19J Pro. But this is mind blowing. What we don't know is the price of these. So bear in mind, don't get overexcited when you see these really efficient miners. It's about the price, the payback on the price. Adam and Jason both articulated you can do a lot more when you underclock some of the what you perceive to be less efficient miners and get equally as good a hash rate out at a lower cost. When you take into account what you've paid for the miners in the first place. It wouldn't surprise me if Adam was out there buying some of these older miners on the market if he was going to increase the hash rate, because he knows that they've got a great repair service, so he can do that. But Bitdeer going into this market as a producer, they're going to build. They're going to 41 exahash by the end of next year. So that puts them again another top tier 1 miner. Knocking on the door at the moment, not quite tier 1 at the moment. I mean, we said sort of like 10, 12 exahash. You need to be at that sort of level to be knocking on the door of tier 1. They're at 8.4 at the moment, with a plan to get to about 11 by the end of the year, 11.5 by the end of the year, and then it's massive next year. I mean, DR talked about Wolf and Cypher and these sites here. You need to go and look at how much power Bitdeer have got. They've got a 500 megawatt site they're building in Bhutan. They've got 170 megawatts in Norway. They've got 200 megawatts that they're developing in Ohio, and they're already delivering about 20 exahash in mining and self-mining. So they are way over a gigawatt in terms of power under their management, And again, they've got a market cap of about $1 billion. Self-mining represents 40% of the business. 60%, they're doing other things that bring in great margins. Their hosting business brings in great margins. When they build these miners for themselves, if the market does what it did in 2021 and mining prices went through the roof, so they went from $2,000 machine up to sort of $10,000 machine. So I think in terms of terahash, it went from 20 all the way up to $80, $85 a terahash. Cleanspark and IREN are spending $16 on S21s at the moment. Well, they're paying 20% less for machines now that miners were paying in 2021 for the S19s. So, Bitdeer are thinking, well, we'll get all our machines for ourselves first. But if the market changes and the price ramps up from 16 to say 30, whatever like that, we've got a market there. We can sell machines to other miners. We're, competition.
And that's why
it's a win. It's a win-win for them. They have a fill. I mean, 41 exahash is going to be a lot of miners that need for themselves. People will question, can they produce? Well, all these companies out there, the Bitmains, the Canards, the Micro BTs, outsource a lot of their production anyway. So Bitdeer will just be another company going out there and outsourcing the production to a third party. But they're the ones who developed the chips, and the chips are about 80% of the actual machine. So by buying the chips, you've only got another 20% in terms of cost structure there. And doing it for themselves means that they're getting their machines at cost. That's the way they look at it. And if they can sell some, it's a bonus. But the real emphasis was to replace all their machines internally. And even if they get down to 14 joules a terahash, that's better efficiency than all the miners on the market that these miners have bought already. So nobody's gone out and bought there's rumors that Hut might have put an order in for these really new miners because Asher was waiting for the more efficient miners to come out. He did say on the podcast, things will get better in terms of efficiency. And they've got 9,000 Bitcoin. So people are putting two and two together and saying that Hut may have sold a chunk of that Bitcoin to put an order in for these really, 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 really latest efficient, the Hydro XP S21 miners and benefit that way. So, let's see if that update comes out.
That's why Bitcoin's down 7%. Maybe Asher's selling the HODL to buy the new XPs. Anthony, I want to move us along here just so we don't leave any of the miners out. But like you said, I think the critical thing here, you guys, is going to be the pricing of these new machines. Because as you say, Anthony, current future generations, they really came in quite below where we thought they would price them. It'll be interesting to see for the 12, the 10, and maybe the 5 joule per terahash models where they land. So next up, you guys, we've got Hut 8, interestingly enough. And we were just talking about Asher and the, speculation about potentially using some of this HODL. We also saw some news a couple days ago about their new facility here, which they actually built in a record amount of time. Not the scale that we've talked about with Core Scientific or Riot, but still really a feat to be able to get something like this online in a quarter or just over a quarter. So DR, maybe we'll kick off with you for Hut 8. How are you feeling about this company? They haven't come out with production for May yet. Yeah. Relatively quiet.
That's exactly it. I'd love to see the numbers, and the longer it goes before we see them drop for the May production, the more the X community is going to talk. I know that post-halving and the numbers may not be so great. They may have sold. I don't know. I just do know that they did a good job building out their last facility. They do have a good Q1 of 2024. They had almost $300 of EBITDA. They had about $51 million in revenue. They have a HODL of over 9,100, I believe, at the end of the quarter. Should still be about stable. I don't have last month's in front of me, but I want to see the financials. I think this month may have really stressed Hut. I think they did a good job leading through the merger with USBT. I think overall the merger of equals went about as well as one of those could have gone. I do like the move to Asher from Jamie. we talked earlier about the short report. I think they may have set the price back in January, February. It really hammered the stock. They started to pull that around. Everyone wants to take a look under the hood. I don't really know where HUD is until we see either their quarter two or their May production, whichever comes first at this point.
Yeah, fair enough, for sure. Anthony, before we move on to Hive and some of the other players, any comments on HUD 8 Corp?
Yeah, I concur with DR. The issue about not releasing anything is that it is cause for concern. Generally, when miners don't release on time, and I've been doing this now for over 3 years, so I've got great relationships with these. And I contacted Sue a week last Friday to say I'm going to Dallas on Monday. I'm finishing my article at the weekend. If your update's coming out Monday, can you let me have the numbers at the weekend? I'll put them in the article. It won't be released until you firmly release, your numbers. So there's no one gets to see the inside information or anything like that. And she said the lawyers have still got the details. So when people think, well, lawyers. Every one of these updates that goes out by a company goes past the lawyers before it goes out there, because they have to issue these updates. These monthly updates go to the SEC as well, so they're updated on the various could be an 8K or something like that that's produced every month that has the monthly update in there, because these updates have got so much information in that it can move the price of the share.
Oh yeah.
When I started doing this 4 years ago, these companies, and Hut, one of those companies, Hut, one of the oldest miners out there. So Hut, Hive, Bitfarms, Marathon, Riot, and Argo Blockchain were like the 6 early miners that I was doing my analysis on. And typically an update would be 5 or 6 lines. That's it, 1 paragraph. How many we mined? What's our hash rate? Did we hodl anything? And maybe a little 2 lines about maybe a change in a director or something like that. Or now we're getting War and Peace from mining companies. They're producing they're producing 2 or 3 A4 pages on what they're doing, and actually it's great for us 3 and great for Sebastian and Tom and and Penny and Mining Guy and a few others in the space who I could mention. But what you do is you're building expectation that every month is going to be the same. And it's great when the Bitcoin price goes up, but you try and get in hold of these CEOs when the Bitcoin price drops, and whether they'll come on Spaces meetings every week like they're doing at the moment. I think people need to manage that expectation. Peter Wall was the first of the CEOs that did this, and he did this a lot in 2021. And, it's great. The Bitcoin price was rocking. He was answering Q&A sessions on a every fortnight. He'd do a live Q&A session on YouTube. Everyone loved it. It was fantastic. I even got questions asked going back, over 3 years ago, and it was fantastic. Getting recognised to ask a question, and he would answer it honestly. But the expectation is people want to see that every week, and it's not going to happen. So people just need to sort of manage that position there. While we've got access to them now, it's great, and you're doing the interviews on Spaces. We're doing on YouTube. We're going out to sites. It's great because the market's in that sort of upward trend at the moment. When it's not in the upward trend and they're having to sort of like plan and think about what the next moves are, you might not see them available as often. Sure. I sort of like Ash just said give him till quarter 3. For Hut. Let's see what the numbers like in quarter 3. Give him 6 months to be CEO, to put those plans in place, and it won't happen, straight away. So give him to quarter 3. So we will give him to quarter 3, which is another 3 months' time, and we'll see what happens then. But the fact they've not issued an update on monthlies for May is a concern.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see how that all pans out when we get access to it. We've got a couple more miners here to cover, you guys. Not a ton of big news actually in the last week from the remaining miners, but we did want to throw a segment in on them, especially if you have any questions. So Bit Digital, I know you guys have talked with Sam Tabar on your platform as well. DR, they were just out at the Prague event, Bitcoin Prague. Got a great photo with the man, Michael Saylor himself. I'm hoping to get a similar photo here, maybe in Nashville. On a panel talking about the energy revolution in the mining sector. So DR, a couple quick minutes on Bit Digital and your thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. I have had the pleasure of talking to Sam on a space dedicated to HPC and had an ongoing dialogue with him and my partner Adrian via emails. He's been real open. He's got some interesting concepts with the flywheel and some more stuff we're going to pack in the future. But just taking this at the numbers level, to me, the market cap of 340 million doesn't make a lot of sense. And the market really is sleeping overall on Bit Digital. If you just take it from metrics like HODL, 20,000 Ethereum, over 1,000 Bitcoin, 47 million, I want to say, in cash. They're looking somewhere in upwards of 180 million of liquidity. That's over half the market cap. You know, they have a net income of $50 million. They have no debt. They got 8 million plus free cash flow. They got 3 verticals. They're expanding their HPC. I'm going to rattle off bullet points here. Why is this a third of $1 billion? I'm happy. I've been accumulating. Sam has been wonderful to have on the spaces. He's a really good guest, as you guys know. I've been fortunate enough with Adrian Morris to spend some time with him. Just to go back, you know, he was our first we interviewed. Now I actually have IREN coming up on Friday and Jeff LeBurge from Bitdeer. I can talk about them. They're coming in next week on Wednesday. We're going to be announcing that. So these guys have all been just wonderful guests, but Sam to me is near the top of that list. I'm really excited, you know, to see what they're building with the HPC. They were far ahead of that curve. A lot of other companies were calling HPC and AI a distraction. Sam was building something in Iceland, and it's really revenue accretive. So I think that market cap sooner than later, maybe the Ethereum ETF opens it up because they want to dub themselves the micro strategy of ETH. They have all the HODL there. Maybe that gets them more eyes, but sooner than later, the market's going to come around. The money talks, and they're making it.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think that Ethereum ETF may be the catalyst for these guys as well. Really interesting Ethereum flywheel model. And yeah, always a pleasure to talk to the team from Bit Digital. Now, we've got Hive coming up here, and I'm interested. We talked Soluna, so you guys go back, take a closer look at this. This is one of Anthony's top picks right now, and really based on last week's visit with that investor group, a lot of people don't have Soluna on their radar. So definitely go take a look at this one. We covered that in the intro. Hive, though, I'm curious about this one, you guys, because Anthony, this is another one you've been saying on a valuation basis looks very attractive from an M&A perspective. They came out, they're having strong numbers again in May. Frank and team have been telling the story to the world. Very quality management at this company. What are your quick thoughts here, Anthony? A couple minutes on Hive.
Yeah, I did an article for Compass Mining less than a month ago on Hive Digital, and the title of the article was, you know, is Hive the most undervalued miner? So go read the article. It looks at Hive, it looks at all the big miners in the space, looks at a load of valuation metrics. I mean, you know, part of me thinks the market can't value some of these mining companies. They're moving into HPC. So at the moment, they're operating at about a run rate of about 10 million in HPC revenues and imminently going to 20 million. So they had a lot of GPUs from their Ethereum mining days. So they've converted those over to HPC. They're going in a two-pronged, in a similar way to Bit Digital. They haven't got massive amount of debt on the balance sheet. They've got you know, a lot of HODL. They've got, I think, 2,500 Bitcoin. So that's worth you know, getting on for 150 million. And you know, their valuation at the moment is about 300 million. So when you look at enterprise value for Hive, in that article, I think it was down at something like 90 million. Once you take the cash and the Bitcoin HODL off the market capitalization, add back the small amount of debt, you've got about 90 million. Then you've got 5 exahash of hash rate, and we're only valuing the self-mining business here. We've already said they've got a 10 going on to 20 million a year HPC business, but that self-mining using the whole company and forgetting about HPC values Hive at $18 million per exahash, and we've already said the floor is about 100. So why aren't some of these companies getting recognition for what they're doing, not just from a self-mine perspective, but also the fact that they do HPC, and they were probably the first to say we're going to do HPC. Yes, they're obviously in the right place to do it with all those GPU miners from the Ethereum days, like Hut as well. We're also going to go into that space, but you know that they've done things in a sort of like a more managed approach. They've not gone out there and made massive orders and failed to deliver. I think their hash rate target for the end of 2024 is about 8. They have replaced nearly all their machines this year. So they've not been growing hash rate as quickly as we'd like to have seen them grow. But what they have got now is they've got a really efficient fleet that can compete with the Cleansparks and the Riots and Core Scientifics all around that 23, 24 level. So, you know, Hive can compete that way there. We'll expect to see some more big updates this year from them. But I'm just really surprised when I look at valuations. You know, are people sensing, you know, that these sort of like mid-tier and small-tier miners not able to grow the levels? We're, you know, 2 years ago, if you're growing 2x hash in 1 year, that would seem to be quite a good growth rate. But now, if you're not growing 10 or 20 in a year, you feel that you're being left behind. And so it's a case
of a head scratcher for sure. And I'm just texting with Bitcoin Mining Stock Guy. He just put a post out 29 minutes ago on Hive, Anthony, saying they did a 4.5x in terms of market cap in 3 months, from November 29th of last year to March 1st, or sorry, from November 29th of 2020 to March 1st of 2021. They're now at 300 million or so market cap. So this could be one to watch as well.
So Hive and Hut back in 2021, this is Hut 8, not USB, not the new company, were valued at $2.5 billion during 2021 when the Bitcoin price rallied then. Yeah. You know, as a joint company now, they're hovering, and that's a merger of equals, they're hovering around $1 billion, which means that, you know, if you wanted to say the value of Hut 8 element is $500 million. So that's 20% of where their price was 3 years ago. And Hive are in the same position. Hive were $1 billion company. Argo Blockchain were $1.5 billion company in that 2021 period. And now some have really dropped back. But I like the management team at Hive. You know, hopefully they can get to the 8x hash this year, grow the HPC, and you know, we'll see the market hopefully pick up on that.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, you guys, we're just about out of time here. Didn't get a lot of news out of Griffin recently, or at least in the last week, but they are going to be heading to the Mining Disrupt conference in Miami. They did put out some good articles on their Twitter as well, so take a look there. And the other one was SATO Technologies, so we'll be sure to cover this one first. They had a situation on June 1st at one of their facilities. But again, Anthony, based on your results here, efficiency coming through for the team at SATO. So you guys, big week for, and sorry, last one here, DMG. Just wanted to call out, we didn't get any news from DMG, Anthony, but I wanted to throw this in. Another one, very low number of followers, I guess, or interest in this company compared to some of the big NASDAQ players. However, they're quietly up 93% year to date in the past year, trading at 54 cents right now. Didn't get any news out on DMG in the last week, but we'll be sure to follow up on that as soon as they get something out. Now, you guys, we've come to the end of our 2 hours. I feel like we could still keep going, but unfortunately, we have a hard stop today. DR, thanks so much for your time. It was great having you on the channel. We'll be sure to have you again soon, and I'll let you wrap it up in the last minute here.
Thank you guys so much. This honestly came full circle for me. My first initial getting into Bitcoin mining stocks, I started this, I read a lot of what Anthony put out. My own content is about 5 or 6 months old. There are some real giants in this industry. We've talked about them. They run great shows. They put out good content. They're approachable. They've helped me, and I'm glad that people have started to take notice of my platform. I'm having a lot of fun with my co-host and partner, Adrian Morris, doing some lunchtime spaces. We try to keep that hour, weekends and evenings. That's not really my thing. I carve out time, and we're happy to have IREN on Friday. We have Jeff LeBurge from Bitdeer coming on Wednesday. And these forums have been just so eye-opening to me, and being on yours even today, I took notes. Thank you for your knowledge and having me on.
You're most welcome. Anthony, it all started with you, buddy, and we appreciate all the insight you provide to the community here. We'll be back tomorrow with a traditional podcast. And Anthony, I'll pass it to you for a final word.
I feel like I need to send a few invoices out here. All these people following me and stuff on the start, and when I was doing this all for free. But no, it's great to have you on the show today, DR. You know, I've seen a lot of what you've done in the last 6 months, and I say to Bryce, you know, I look at who's out in the space there at the moment and who offers, you know, similar opinions to what I've got there, and especially with the likes of yourself, the likes of Sebastian and Tom, you know, very, very consistent with, you know, with my approach as well. So, you know, it's great that we've got plenty of people in the space, all using different mediums to provide this information that you know, investors and people want, you know, that they thrive, they thirst for this information. So, you know, we're just doing a service for them, and yeah, long may it continue.
And we'll be back tomorrow, Anthony, with a traditional podcast. We're looking forward to it, you guys. And we'll see you again next week, same time, same place for the live broadcast. Thanks so much.